Hey, there you go. Good evening, everybody. Lock up your wives and girlfriends. The handsomest panel on YouTube football universe is around. It's the EPL panel show. You don't have to mention this week. You're stuck with me, but that's okay because I've got an accent too, and that's important. And in fact, the only one who doesn't have an accent here is Shay. So we got to get rid of him. We are joined by Shay, Jamie, and Glenn. Lads, it's it. That's it. Other than the Europa Conference and the Champions League final and the Club World Cup and then 20 million friendlies and the Nations League and all of that stuff. It's all done for the year. Now we get the last week of the games. How are we all feeling?
I feel very bad for you, Shay. I think I'm quite relieved.
I think it was a good weekend of football and then marred by the events that happened in Liverpool, but thankfully no fatalities, and that's I think something we can all be thankful for. But once we get to the bottom of it all, then we can start having opinions. But today is just for positivity to a degree, and also Manchester United. We have to add that caveat in. But what we're going to talk about tonight is we go over the game week with the last day of games. There were some nail-biting games and results and controversies to keep us going, ticking along. Talk about that. We'll see what everybody thinks. I know what Shay's opinion is going to be of that decision to disallow the goal against Manchester United. We talk about the pre-season, basically the post-season, what you hope to expect from your team. That includes any European games your team happens to be in, of which there is one tomorrow. And then hopefully one of you wise gentlemen can explain to me what the outcome of that score will be for the league table for anybody who's chasing Europe at all, because I have no clue, and I don't think anybody else does. And then the team that surpassed your expectations and the team that went underwhelmingly below them for the end for the night. Okay, so let's just look at the scores from the weekend. Leicester City finishing on a crashing low, as their want. Wolves and Brentford with a draw. United sadly beating Villa, and Villa getting a red card. And, we'll talk about that game and maybe the possibility that red card would indicate maybe a bid for a young Irish goalkeeper with a ginger hair and a crappy beard at Liverpool, but who is nonetheless immensely talented. Newcastle being beaten by Everton, Ipswich, West Ham, a nice win for West Ham, and then Ipswich, what the hell are you even doing in the league? City getting the win that nobody cares about against Fulham. Chelsea beating Forest by that one goal. We could talk a little bit about Forest maybe as one of the underwhelming teams. Arsenal getting the win they don't need and nobody cares about. Liverpool getting the sending off, but we talked about that enough. And then Spurs getting absolutely trashed by Brighton. Maybe Ange's last stand there, but he doesn't care. He's won a trophy in his second year. It is what it is, mate. He does what he says on the tin. So let's go back to it there. Let us start, Glenn. Wolves, Brentford. You had a bit of trepidation about this game, if I remember, last week. I think you may have called it as tight as that scoreline was. But tell me about your impressions of that game.
Yeah, it was a decent game. Good end to end, classic end of the season kind of vibes, really. Both teams on the attack. I'm surprised the scoreline was really, 1-1. It could have been a lot higher, I think. Both keepers made some saves, but, we took the lead. Brian and Mbumo, another tidy finish, another decent goal for us. Norgard with the assist, just really nicked it off them in there around the penalty area, ball out to Norgard, and it eventually gets back to Mbumo, who poked it home for his 20th goal. So incredible achievement for him, goals-wise. And then, we could have scored more. King Lewis Potter had a good chance. He chipped it over. It wasn't the worst finish, but that could have been 2-0. Wissa, on a different day, might even have a brace with a few chances for him. But they equalised with the most bizarre goal. It was like as route one as you want. It was, instead of the goalkeeper taking the goal kick, it was the centre-back, as you might have seen. The centre-back just hoofs it as far as he can from the goal kick. Strand Larson, who's been I think a bit of a revelation this season for Wolves. He's been really consistent as a target man, old-fashioned target man who scores important goals. He wins the flick on, and then their player just runs onto it it bounces and he just volleys it into the top corner. So it was both a magnificent goal because the finish was amazing, but it was also the most like dreadfully non-league sort of build up, which was a long goal kick flicked on. So it's a really naive goal to concede. But when all said and done, as we'll probably talk about a little bit today, Europe wasn't in the picture by that point really because of the Chelsea result, among other things. It looked very unlikely with the way the results fell, and then we didn't beat Fulham anyway last week, right? So Europe was kind of fading away, but the fact that Brighton turned over Spurs meant that regardless of what we did, and the fact that Chelsea beat Forest, when I think we needed them to lose, if I remember rightly, there were a lot of variables. We didn't do the business last week. We didn't do the business this week. But honestly, it's fine. I mean, in a regular season, a point away at Wolves, which is a hard place to go, is perfectly fine. And yeah, we both had about 6-7 shots on target. Possession was even. I think 1-1 was probably fair. We probably did enough to win it, but fair enough. Credit to Wolves. They put on a really good fight, and we didn't quite have enough for Europe, but that's fine because I don't think that was an expectation for sure. I think top half, we finished 10th for the second time in 4 years. I'll take that. It's a shame we slipped a little bit right from kind of 8th to 9th to 10th, but I'm not going to complain. And I'm glad Mbeumo got his 20th goal. I mean, unbelievable returns for him. And he'll be heading out, as we might even discuss, to a big team, maybe in stature and fan base, but not necessarily in terms of points this season. So I'll be curious to see where he goes, but he'll certainly be leaving with the blessing of the Brentford fans because we're a selling club when all's said and done. And Thomas Frank said as much. But yeah, decent way to end the season. Can't complain. Didn't lose. And, a fair result, I think, over the 90 minutes.
Let me just point out that a Route 1 goal has the same value as a goal from 27 passes, my friend. Oh, I'll take them all day long. Now, we will talk about this later, but this is a thing because the news already has Cunha going from Wolves to United. Maybe the scouts were just at that game. But this is the thing about clubs that do so well in a season is you're just sitting there waiting for the vultures to circle. Let me go back to Brentford, though. I mean, it is a nice feeling, isn't it, Glenn, to be disappointed that you didn't get into Europe when maybe a lot of pundits and maybe some fans even had you battling relegation as one of those teams, but to actually be able to turn around and go, hey, look, we did okay, and we've something to build on. That has to be a nice feeling.
Yeah, and so many of our players excelled this season, improved. So Nathan Collins was the only player across the entire Premier League you might have seen to play every minute of every game. And only a few minutes behind him was Mbeumo, actually. So, we've had some really consistent performances. Van den Berg from you guys, obviously Maka, was really good. We paid big money for him, but he delivered, and he's one for the future, right? So the fact he's starting, he's displaced Pinnock, he's the equal first choice centre back with Collins. That's great. Coyote we got on loan. We've now made that permanent for a bargain, like 80 million euros. He looks like a real revelation on the right. And as I've said before on the podcast, right, 3 forwards hitting double figures in Schade, Wissa, and Mbeumo is just like no other team in the league, or really many in Europe in top leagues are doing that. And honestly, one of the standout players was Damsgaard as well, who was incredible as a playmaker. We had high expectations for him. He had injury problems. Eriksen came in and obviously gave us a glimpse of like a really high level playmaker, obviously in the twilight of his career now, but Damsgaard was exceptional. And the way he unlocked defenses with those forward balls, he's always looking to play it forward, and you're going to give the ball away a lot doing that, but you're also going to actually get balls in behind. So he was great. And even Yarmouk, right, young player, come from our B team, Ukrainian midfielder, he's barely 21. He started like the last 4 or 5 games in a row and looked every bit a Premier League midfielder. So honestly, Maka, the entire team. Oh, can I say Keane Lewis-Potter, who is a winger turned one of the best left backs in the division week in, week out. Oh, and one more, Mark Flecken, who's getting a lot of interest from Germany as well. You might have seen a couple of rumors that maybe Leverkusen want in for him, but he had such a shoddy first season. We talked about this, I think, before Maka. He was a bit of a rough start for him. He's been brilliant. He's made the most saves in the entire Premier League. So when we've got players hitting metrics for minutes, saves, goals, I mean, hey, it's a really good season. And if we had been a little bit tighter at the back over the whole season, then maybe we'd be looking at 8th or 7th. But, it was a memorable season for us.
And let's hope that you're not the victims of that success with the transfer windows open up, etc., etc. Let's go back. Jamie, you're a Chelsea man, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Yeah, do you need help? We can call somebody for you if you want. No, only kidding. Only kidding. Forest against Chelsea. I mean, that was one of the nail-biting games, wasn't it? That was one of the ones where so many of the permutations depended or were affected by that result. So tell me about, I mean, like, Forest were kind of having a down period at the wrong time of the season for them, but correct me if I'm wrong as a Chelsea fan, Maresca is just, he's not hit that consistency yet where you kind of know what you're going to get each week. So it's good that you kind of picked it up at the right point, almost like opposite fortunes for Forest and Chelsea. And it's a good result to go into the final tomorrow against Betis. Isn't Anthony playing for Betis?
He is, yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be a tasty contest there. But tell me your impressions of that game, Jamie.
I was a little worried actually heading into that game. I was watching on USA, and I think it was USA anyway. And about a minute before kickoff, they were showing the Palace Liverpool build-up, which is literally the game that no one cared about, even the Liverpool fans in the bar. So relieved when it transitioned to Chelsea. We won, I think, 5 of our last 6. So pretty solid finish. And fortunately for us, that coincided with a downturn in Villa, Forest, and to an extent Newcastle's form. We were very fortunate. I think we played fine in the game. We weren't terrific. We got the goal. It seems like when Forest go behind, they aren't great at coming back. But if they do get a first goal, then it really plays into their counter. Again, a defender scored our goal. Colwill, and I guess Cucurella has been our talisman for the past few weeks. Weird season though. We were decent up until Christmas. Then that was when we were playing Poch ball. Then we switched to Maresca ball and started playing awfully. And we seem to have found our form a little bit, similar to how we did at the end of last season. It's good to have another win and success for the team heading into the Conference League. It's a bit of a free hit. We're already in the Champions League. I was kind of dreading needing to win the Europa League against Betis. Sorry, what is it even called? Conference League, in order to get into the Europa League. But I think we are where we belong. I think this secures our secures our finances. I think our finances were built on Champions League success, so we would have been in quite a lot of trouble. Like people say we won, we would have sold something to ourselves and got out of it. But yeah, I think fortunate to have won. We didn't play great. Chris Wood had a couple of chances he probably could have and should have scored, but that's in the record books. 1-0 Chelsea in the Champions League, finishing 4th.
I think I did hear something today on one of the radio shows, the serious ones over here, that there was an awful lot riding financially on getting into the Champions League. So when Maresca did his job really there, didn't he? He did. He's a bit redoubtable to bring an old word back into fashion. But there's a lot more likability to Maresca than there is, let's say, against Mikel Arteta, as they both come from the same coaching tree. But Maresca seems a little bit more with his head screwed on, doesn't he? Even if he is a little bit weird. He's a little bit weird, Jamie. I'm sorry. He's a little bit weird.
Right. There's nothing like Arteta, I think, has something about him, and there's something to like or dislike. Like Mourinho, like a lot of top managers have something about them. With Maresca, it's hard to really pinpoint other than his kind of tactical nuance. It was weird. I quite liked his post-match press conference, getting a bit offensive at the media, but it's quite interesting him saying like nobody believed in us. It's like, well, everyone believed in Chelsea until you told them not to. Then they were like, fine, the performances are starting to match that, and then suddenly you're like, oh, it's us against the world. So interesting narrative that he's trying to rewrite a little bit, but again, like he did what he was brought in to do, which is to get in the Champions League. Now it's a case of, can we find a striker that can put him in the net and a goalkeeper that can keep him out, and then how can we progress from here?
Now I'm not going to go to Shay immediately because Shay's game folds right into the next topic, but let us look at the Spurs game. Now, if you look, I'm sure you guys weren't watching, or maybe you were barely watching the Crystal Palace Liverpool game, but there was a clear sense of two teams that had won their trophies, done their business for the season, and just didn't care. And that was like the tone for Liverpool, certainly since we won the league, is we just didn't care. We just play a game, head back to a beat, the neck the disco biscuits, and then go back again for the next game. And Crystal Palace had that, and I think Newcastle a little bit after the Carabao Cup as well. The objective for the season was done, and it's kind of hard to motivate yourself. What I want to look at is that Spurs-Brighton thing result. Big Ange Shea talked about winning a trophy in his second season, and he did win a trophy in his second season. He, got the glove slap out to everybody there, but Spurs were still dismal. Was that a case that maybe none of them cared at that point? They were still drunk. Or is the malaise so bad that Ange he should be packing his socks up right now?
I was on mute.
You sounded like a keyboard there when you were talking.
I did. No, I would say it was a little bit of both because yes, they were still probably a little lacking from the celebrations, but I still think they were just abysmal in the sense of we've all seen it. We know Ange probably didn't prepare the team as well as he probably should have because I think he knows he's probably gone in the summer. I just don't see Spurs keeping on to him for such an abysmal season. But it was pretty bad. The one Spurs fan that was at the pub with us, he's just like, I'm not even watching the game. I'm just here to hang out. Like he flew all the way from England to Nashville and was hanging out. He's like, just kind of slowly told us, he's like, we're losing. I was like, what's the score? He said 4-1, and he just kind of put his phone upside down. I was like, wow, at least he is honest about it. He's like, we made it. But he was not very optimistic of Ange staying. And I kind of told him, I was like, well, maybe they'll give him the summer transfer window to bring in his players again. I don't know if they will or not, just because, you're going to fall into that same trap. Hey, he brings in players that he wants, and then they start terrible to the season and they fire him. I would give him like a month maybe, and then they're in the same spin cycle all over again. Congrats to them winning it, obviously. I didn't watch it, but I heard it was a very boring game from what everybody said. It was just kind of like, oh, hey, do we really want to win this match for both teams? And they just kind of duked it out. We'll see what happens. I don't know who they'll go after if they do fire him. I don't see him being secure with this one trophy, but he did what he came out to say. We all made fun of him, but he kept to his word. So
Sam Allardyce is always there waiting on the 3-point.
Yeah, you got Big Sam. Steve Bruce is still hanging around somewhere. They could bring Sean Dyson and just kind of play just terrible soccer again.
Yeah, you may as well do that. Jamie, let me ask you this as a London rival of Spurs, a London rival fan. And Big Ange said his season was actually quite good. It's hard to square that off despite winning the trophy. Is he full of guff? Or is that, would you accept? You wouldn't accept. See, this is what I'm trying. This is why I can't get my head around Big Ange saying that, because you wouldn't accept the Europa Conference and finish in 17th, would you?
No, I think it's different for Tottenham, though. To be fair,
they haven't won anything.
We own Spurs. It's just Spurs, lads. But Tottenham, this first time winning in Europe for 17 years. I think they won one of the cup competitions at some point. They don't win much, so it's not like Man United, who had all that success winning the FA Cup and then Ten Hag staying. Like, it's actually a huge achievement for Tottenham to win anything. So if Ange says that he sacrificed the league to win the cup, I think that's a bit of revisionist history, because they were very much in both competitions until being out of contention in the Premier League was decided for them, and then they had to focus on the Europa League. But ultimately, I think it is an achievement for Spurs to win a trophy. Is that enough to save him? I don't know. I think you've got to look forward. Like, what's done is done. Where if he wasn't able to successfully manage a Europa League campaign and a Premier League campaign, is he going to be any better at managing a Champions League campaign and a Premier League campaign? The argument would suggest no. But they also had, I know a lot of teams did, Arsenal did, they had significant injuries at Tottenham. And he bought a couple of players, the centre-backs, back too soon, which was not ideal. But if they're going to keep the same coaching staff, the same medical staff, and he's going to keep his playing style, and they've got Champions League, like you'd think that it's a recipe for disaster. I wouldn't be against Levy if he did keep him, but I feel as though Daniel Levy's going to do Daniel Levy things and replace him. But I'd only do that if you have someone waiting in the wings. But like, who is he going to replace him with? I can't immediately think of anyone, unless it's one of the Premier League managers from another team. Kieran McKenna, maybe no longer a Premier League manager.
Let me ask you this though, Jamie, just to kind of up the stakes a bit. Would you accept the Champions League trophy and finish in 17th?
Yes.
So we can't kind of understand where Spurs are coming from, or at least Ange, isn't it? He's kind of saying, I gave you the thing you wanted. Don't look at the league table. But I gave you the thing you've wanted for so long. But still, he should have managed that season a little bit better than he did, ultimately, shouldn't he, with the resources he had, despite the injuries. Let's go back to the scores, because I want to talk about, with Glenn, the one you needed to go in your favour, Everton-Newcastle. Was that a Tonali pick last week? Did somebody pick Everton over Newcastle? I can't quite remember. But Glenn, this was not the time for Everton and David Moyes to suddenly become tactical masterclass tacticians and specialists away 1-0 wins, was it?
No, this wasn't relevant to us. It was the Chelsea Notts Forest one that we were really hinging on. This was a funny kind of just like for Shea. This was one that really
for Shea, yeah.
For this was like the kind of for Shea and certainly for Jamie as well, right? Of course, right. If Newcastle had won, then it might be a different story on goal difference. Similar goal difference. But I guess if Newcastle had won, they would have finished above you, right, Jamie? So yeah, this was a crunch match for the top 4-5, and yeah, it was very odd. I haven't seen the highlights of it yet. It was one of those games where you're checking the scores, because I play football on Sundays, so I got the first half of most of the games, and it was one of those ones where you kept expecting it to switch back round to form. You expect an Isak goal, you expect Murphy, Barnes, whoever, and it just felt like you were waiting as a fan watching the other games come in for them to turn it around, and it was really, really surprising they didn't. I don't think anyone had, as a Tonali pick, right, Mac, I don't think Everton getting a win at St. James's, which I always say is the hardest place to go in the Premier League. There's no place, maybe it's just like Brentford particularly struggled there, but if there's one fixture I usually put down for a 0 points early on in the season, it's always going to St. James's. Be really, really interesting to see whether the Stadium of Light over in neighbouring Sunderland becomes a bit of a fortress as well next season. And it's going to be amazing to have that rivalry back in the Premier League, because that's a proper football rivalry, which I love. So that's exciting. And I mean, to Newcastle fans, by the skin of their teeth, right? And Shay, this for you, obviously, as we'll get to in a minute, this is the devastation. For the Villa fans, which is if you had done the business, if you'd got a point, then suddenly this clangor by Newcastle, I don't know what the odds would have been on Everton win, but it would have been minuscule. For them to drop that, not even draw, to actually lose at home in a crunch match that matters to them. It was an odd end of the season, wasn't it? Because we always expect high-scoring games and chaotic results, and not many of them, a couple of them did, like obviously the Spurs game, but a lot of them were more like low-scoring thrillers. And United, with Villa and Everton, both provided that, because no one expected. Imagine if you had a double on to put Everton and United to both get wins. I mean, no one was saying that. So you got these like freak results where the teams that did have stuff to play for actually just ran out of steam or just put in a really insipid performance. But also, if you flip this just slightly, Everton finishing 13th, ending the season, 2 wins out of the last 3. Moyes has been magnificent there, and he's turned what was a bit of a sinking ship under Dyche. I think he got a lot of the fans did hate him. The brand of football was pretty rough, but he also is a very competent manager, and I thought he got a lot of abuse that was probably unwarranted. But there's no arguing with the impact Moyes had. And if you're looking at some managers having a real impact straight off the bat, he just brought this like competency and calmness and experience right away. And for them to have such a pivotal season, right, and for them to leave their stadium, for the women to take over, which is exciting. It would have been devastating for them to be relegated, especially with you guys, Macca, winning it. Can you imagine? New stadium, your rivals win the league, you're in the championship. It would have been a catastrophe. So
not for us.
Not for you guys. I wouldn't have cared, but it's credit Moyes and as you mentioned, Mac, like what a win, what a way to sign off, to say, hey, I've restamped my identity and my tactics on this team. They became a really hard team to play, and they're not a very good squad. There's not a great squad there, so credit to him. That was probably the biggest shock of the weekend. Surely, unbelievable result.
And then we said before, just for Moyes' sake, like as much as a stick we give him as Liverpool fans from Everton and United, the fact that he had such a bad squad and did such a good job shows he has the coaching chops. Maybe not for Manchester United, but we've seen now after 10 years, who the hell does?
Jose Mourinho, that's it.
Jamie, you were going to say something there?
Just Everton doing us a favour. Like, teams in blue, solidarity in blue. I was out the corner of my eye when there was a goal. I was shocked that it did not come from Newcastle. Relieved, shocked, but thank you, Everton. In the end, we actually could have lost against Forest and still progressed, I think, in 5th place, given the results that went on around us. But hats off to Everton and everyone who paved the way.
So let's go on to the controversy. United against Villa. What we'll do, Shay, is we'll talk through the game itself before we get to the incident. Okay, we'll leave that till the end. But tell us about the game. Number one, I didn't know this at the time, but Martinez got sent off. That was his last game for Villa.
Probably.
Yeah, probably his last match. Terrible way to go out. I mean, I love Emmy, but I was very disappointed in him. It was the most jackass move you could probably do to end your Villa career, especially after he's done so much for us. And he is a enigmatic, or however you say that word, just a polarizing figure. But it was his fault. I 100% blame it. Like, we didn't play well, and then I will say Matty Cash kind of put him on an island. But you, as a senior goalkeeper, why would you go out and try to clothesline somebody like you're playing American football? So he is 100% to blame for that loss, and I will not let him let that down. But overall, just didn't play well. I think the team ran out of gas. I mean, that's kind of one of Emery's biggest downsides, is he will run the same 11 over and over and over, which is fine. They're professionals. They should be able to do that. But I just think we weren't fully prepared. I think there was a lot on the line, and the team kind of let that get to themselves. And just whenever Emmy went out, the whole thing changed. I mean, we were getting pressed the entire time. But I will say, come out the second half after that, they played well. And then that's when the controversy started, as everybody saw. And I'm sure everyone on Twitter it was the biggest debate of the weekend, besides everybody getting the points that they needed. But I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. But all I can say is it's typical Manchester United biased. I feel like it does happen against us quite a bit. I think the last few times I've watched Villa and United play, they always get something. I remember Bruno Fernandes stepping on Konsa and getting Konsa sent off and a penalty. And then you watch replay, he literally trips himself. But typical stuff. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if you guys saw it, Glenn or Jamie. It was pretty bad. Like, I get goalkeepers have protection rules against that, but you literally watch it and he didn't even touch the ball. It was a fair challenge. And then Mac and I were talking before we started the podcast. He blew the whistle before you could even take a look at it. And then even VR said it probably was clean and a foul, but they couldn't do anything. So I just think we've discussed this a bunch on this podcast of just the poor refereeing of this season. And I feel like they have to do something in the summer, not just because of this. Like, it is what it is. Like I said, I accepted the defeat. Whenever Emmy went down, it is what it is. United had every chance to win that game without getting extra help from a 12th man, basically. The only bad part about this is, not qualifying for Champions League is going to put us in another financial burden again. We're going to probably have to sell 2 or 3 players, and whoever we buy has to be something either we get on a free deal or a good price to warrant the wages. Rashford's probably not going to come now because he even kind of said to determining where we finish, we get Champions League, he may consider it. I'm fine with not signing him just because I don't want to pay somebody $400,000 a week for him to get hurt 2 months into the season and then just kind of have to recover. I still think they'll go in for Asensio because I think PSG put a $50 million price tag on him, which is not bad considering the way the players get or the money that they have to pay for players now. His wages will be the issue. So I think that was the thing. Not the penalty, but the fact that now we have to do a lot of accounting. And somebody said earlier in the comments, how are they getting the money or United getting the money to sign these two players? Because I think Cunha went for what, like $63-64 million. Like, where did that money come from? Like, they haven't qualified for Europe in 2 years or won anything. But that's the nice thing about the big six clubs. They can spend the money that they want to without getting in trouble yet.
Well, just for going forward, I'm pretty sure Liverpool will pay you to take Darwin Núñez off our hands. So.
I'm okay. I don't know if we need that. That's fine.
I like him.
You can have him as well. He's dreadful. Let's look at the table. Final one. Liverpool top, obviously. Arsenal, City, Chelsea, Newcastle in the top 5 spots. Villa just on the outside there. On goal difference, that's the cruel nature of it, of how important that goal or non-goal was. Forest in 7th, a big drop for them, and Brighton, Bournemouth, and Brentford, they're top 10 there, Glenn. You can't beat that. I think that's a good result. And then bottom, Fulham, Palace, Everton, West. Everton over West Ham has to be a bit of a laugh for David Moyes. He has to be having a bit of a chuckle to himself with that. And then United, Wolves, Spurs, the next 3. Spurs, it is dreadful when you look at it, but they literally conceded one less goal than they scored. So. A big hint there, Big Ange. Maybe do some defending in your coaching sessions. And then Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton relegated already. But let us talk about Jamie and Glenn, the incident. We get your two perspectives. We'll start with Jamie. Here is an image I catched from somewhere. I'm not telling anybody where. Of like, is that the right game? That's not maybe not even the right game. But here's what I saw. Here's the diagram I saw, because I did referee courses like 20 years ago. And the goalkeeper had to have contact on the ball, secure contact for it to be in possession. And then somebody on Facebook, I think it was like, the ball has to be between their hands. And I'm like, well, how wide do the hands have to be before it stops being between their hands? Is this, Jamie, is this a case, much like offside, where we don't want to have a 270-page rule book like the NFL, but we might have to have little extensions and little amendments to the rules to fully explain what, I know there's guidances to the referees, but to fully explain what in control of the ball actually means? Because how many times have we seen the goalkeeper bend down and pretend to take the ball to try and tempt the forward in and waste a few seconds? Do you think that call was justified? And if not, what does that say about the refereeing? Because that would be a dreadful decision at any level, I think.
I thought it was a goal. I was watching the game without sound, and with a bunch of Villa fans in the table next to me. They were saying, it's a goal. And I said to them, we can't hear the audio. If he blew the whistle, there's no way it can be a goal because he's already blown it dead. That was the only thing that everyone agreed that would prevent it being a goal. I cannot believe he blew the whistle. Control, you're absolutely right, Maka. It seems like there shouldn't be a need for an interpretation of it or a detailing of what that entails. I was a goalkeeper. Control meant 2 hands holding it and no one being able to move it. I think you can understand what the ref thought. The keeper, Rogers was in between him and the goalkeeper. It looked like he potentially kicked it out of his hands, but maybe he's a bit gun shy given what happened last week or a couple of weeks ago at Forest when they let play go on and play and where you got injured. Like they want to blow it dead, but literally 2 seconds, if that, and you let VAR look at it for such an important. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the Villa statement, or I don't know why you need to do that, but I agree with the sentiment. Like with such an important game on the line, let it go to VAR. Like it's sad that we're saying that referees can't make decisions, but when Man United go right down the other end and score essentially, and the game turns on its head, like that felt like insult to injury when Villa had already lost Martinez, which apparently, at least the Villa fans next to me, thought was a controversial decision. I thought even if there was 11 men on the line, it still should have been a red card, based on the clothesline that you talked about earlier, Shay. But yeah, Villa can feel very hard done by this week, I think.
Glenn, isn't this exactly the type of situation that they brought VAR in for? Let the play go and develop, and then bring it back if there was a clear and obvious error, such as maybe the keeper did get a good solid control on the ball, and then they can go, well, look, he got solid control, you kicked it out of his hands, no goal, free kick, Man United. But to blow the whistle that prematurely, all you can think of is that his missus must be disappointed every night.
Well, regardless of that, Macca, might have to get VAR for that as well. I think there's a couple of things at play here. I think number one, the biggest error is obviously what we've all agreed upon, which is that he blew the whistle when he shouldn't have, which foreclosed VAR actually having an intervention on this. That was an error. It's a very unfortunate one. It's not many ways to generously read that, except, obviously, as you mentioned, there was the injury last week. Some talk about whether there should have been a more senior referee officiating this particular game because there was a lot at stake for it. Maybe so. All I would say is I was playing football, as I said, this weekend, and I didn't see it in real time. And all I saw when I came off the field was all these messages and texts and tweets about how outrageous this decision was, how absolutely the biggest clanger of the season. It's robbed Villa, etc., etc. And, when I watched it back just in real time watching it, I didn't see it being a complete, clear-cut, absolutely shocking decision. I think you mentioned it, Jamie, that maybe the referee's perspective in real time. There are certainly an angle or two where you can see the goalkeeper is kind of in his space, and I can see a case for it's basically under control to some extent. You can even slow it down further and see, is there any impact? I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, but is there any impact on, Rodgers' foot with the goalkeeper's hand? These are things that VAR would check as well, right? All I want to say is that I did not get the sense at all when I'm watching it. I'm clearly in the minority here. I didn't think it was the worst decision of the season, maybe even of the weekend. I was like, to me, it looked as if it was pretty much the goalkeeper had pretty much got it covered. And did Morgan Rodgers nip in legally? Maybe quite lightly. It sounds like the majority of people watching it would agree. I don't necessarily agree that he legally got there first and the goalkeeper did not have it under his hands. Okay, but obviously the real error, as we've all talked about, and I do feel bad for Shea about this and Villa, is that it didn't go to VAR. Am I 100% sure? I mean, maybe they'll say, maybe they've kind of said as much, but I wouldn't be 1,000% sure, convinced that VAR would immediately be yep, goal, great, because you just never know. You can see it from different angles. You can see different things. I just don't think it was quite as black and white as pretty much everyone I've seen talk about it has said. But also he's made the fatal error of blowing the whistle, which means it is purely in his purview. And if the majority of people think he's got it wrong, which they do, and that's fine, then this is all on the referee. And unfortunately for Shea and Villa, it was an extremely momentous moment in the season, in the game. Jamie, you touched on the goal straight after. To have a moment flare up like this that is so contentious with so much riding on it was deeply unfortunate. And I do feel for Villa, I would just say from a personal capacity, and I would have loved Villa to make Champions League. They're my favorite team of the ones in the running for it. I just could see a world in which, the keepers kind of gathered it. And maybe it's not a goal the way everyone on this bandwagon seemed to agree it was. That's all I would say differently, but he shouldn't have blown the whistle, of course. And therein lies the entire problem.
I mean, that's the point, though, really, isn't it? If he wasn't 100% sure, he should have let it run. I mean, I get the idea of, the injury event a couple of weeks before, but it's a different situation. You have to apply some sort of logic and context to it as a rational human being. But if the referee wasn't 100% sure, that's what VAR is supposed to help out, isn't it? It's supposed to give him that kind of fallback option. If I'm not sure about this, so let's see how it plays out. Okay, let's look at it more carefully, and then we got it wrong or we got it right, one way or the other. So I mean, I think it is probably, you will get arguments that you did have the ball under control. You will get arguments that you didn't have the ball under control. But the main point of that is the incompetence of the refereeing, really. I'm going to call it incompetence just because it's part of a pattern for 38 games or 38 weeks from English referees. But Shea, regardless of which, I mean, you're obviously going to be biased towards the it was a detriment to you. But the game overall, between the red card and that incident, one of the comments says that Emery did manage the games well towards the end. Would you agree with that? Was this a case here where, you know, Emery didn't manage the game better, or do you think he got everything right and, you know, just circumstances went against him on the day?
Oh, I mean, like I said from the beginning, like, we did not play well. Like, I would have fully deserved a normal 2-1-0, you know, loss for that if it wasn't for just that conference. Because, like I said, Emmy 100% lost us the game. You know, let the goal in. Like, you as a goalie, you make that decision. There's no need to run out there like a sweeper keeper. Like, let him have it. Because 9 times out of 10, we've seen how bad Hoyland has been. He would have probably scuffed it. Like, the dude can't shoot if a wide open goal was there. So that was just an unnecessary risk to take. And then, you know, agree with the last few games, like we were on a pretty decent streak though. So I don't really say that towards the end. Like, I think we managed the games really well towards the end of the season. It was kind of like the mid-season where we dropped points early in the season, and that's what kind of bit us in the ass a little bit. Because if you look, our last 4, I'm pretty sure we won most of the matches. Like, this was the last loss that we had for a little bit. Like, I would say the City game, you know, it's City. You know, it's always going to be tough because at the end of the day, they still have way better quality of players than we do. And truly, you have world class versus very good players that we have. It's just frustrating because, you know, like I said, if this is Emi Martinez's last game, it's just a very, very sad way to go out because he's done so much for us as a club and for his personal self. Like, he's proven to be one of the best keepers in the world, but he's a hothead, plays like a maverick when you don't really need to be doing that as a goalkeeper. Like, do that in your box and in the line. Because if he would have taken him out in the box as a penalty, they could have, you know, VAR'd it, gone to a penalty, and just said, hey, we're going to give the goalie benefit of the doubt. But, you know, it is what it is. Like you said earlier, Maka, now we're in Europa League. This is Emery's cup. This is his tournament. So we have a high chance and probably should be the favorites to win it. My biggest concern, kind of like I said earlier, is what's the team going to look like this summer? Because that $30 million or however much you lost of not securing Champions League is going to be massive for us because the league is already on our ass about selling players, which we had to do last year. You know, we got rid of Douglas Luiz and Diaby. Didn't need to, but we had to because they were going to sit there and do they just Everton, probably point deduction. So now the owners have to figure out who do we drop off? You know, do we move on Ollie Watkins? Do we finally sell him to Arsenal and they can have their striker? Or
you already sold Duran as well, right?
Yeah, we sold Duran for 70, but that still wasn't enough. Like, we sold Duran and literally used the money to get I think we just used the wages. So, like, that's how I don't know how truly it works. Like, we kind of use the wages to bring on the 2 loan players. I feel like that should get cleared once the season's over because they're not on the team full time or, you know, permanently. I have a feeling, like I said, I think Ollie's probably going to be on, I hate to say the chopping block, but like he'll be one that they'll let go just because he is 30 years old. And I mean, I don't want to get rid of him because we'll be in the same situation as Arsenal and Chelsea. Then we don't have a striker. Martinez, you know, they are rumors of him leaving. I mean, if he goes to Saudi, that's fine. I'd rather him go there or he goes somewhere in Spain. I just don't know how much you're going to get for him, like maybe 30 million. But then there's a situation. We need 2 goalkeepers because Olsen is leaving too, and we have nobody on the bench. So we have to bring in 2 goalkeepers. You're going to have to bring in another striker. And with us being on this financial fair play stuff, like where's the money going to come from and how are we going to spend it? So it'll be a little nervy. Yeah, it's going to be a very nervy summer. The only positive is they are coming to Nashville, so I get to watch my team play down the street from my house. So that's honestly all I'm looking forward to at this point.
You can always take Chiesa and Kelleher from us.
I don't know.
Cheap. Yeah, you. But here's what I want to ask now. So just on that note, we'll start with Jamie. What do you want Chelsea's pre-season, post-season to look like? What are you looking for in terms of lightening the squad, maybe? Because you still have a very overburdened squad numbers, don't you, Jamie, in terms of all of the young players, but do you want to see players go out on loan? Do you want to? Is there positions? I know you mentioned goalkeeper, maybe a more reliable striker up front. What are you looking for between now and the start of next season for Chelsea?
Like you mentioned in the intro, it's a bit of a stop-start. We've got the Club World Cup very soon. I think we've got a little bit of a June window before then where we can potentially strengthen and kind of incorporate early. I want Cole
That's
Palmer.
next week, isn't it?
Yeah, I want Cole Palmer to put his feet up for a couple of weeks. Let's start there. I wouldn't mind if he wasn't in any of the England setup either. Just give him a break and let him reset, recharge. We need to strengthen at goalkeeper. We've got so many of them. I wouldn't mind if we actually brought back in Petrovic. He's done really well at Strasbourg, as is Santos. So we're gaining quite a few players that we bought previously that are now joining Chelsea. Like you mentioned, we got to get rid of a lot of the loan players, whether that's another loan or sell them. Like if Aston, I could see a world where we ship a goalkeeper, a couple of players to Villa, and plus cash for like a Morgan Rogers or someone like that for an inflated fee. Like take him off your hands when you're in need for cash. We need a striker. I don't think Ollie Watkins fits the mold for the way we like to play. We need someone who's going to hold the ball up. He doesn't look great at that. But those are our biggest the biggest areas that we need to strengthen. We were in for Howson, the center back from Bournemouth. So I don't know whether we were just in for him because he fits the profile of the young star with a high ceiling, or we're actually interested in other center backs other than Colwill that we like, and moving on to Sassy and potentially Badiashile, who's rubbish. Like we could be fairly thin once we get rid of guys who haven't quite made the grade. But in summary, goalkeeper and strengthening a goalkeeper and striker are musts. And I think incorporating some of the players from Brazil and Santos into the first team are going to be crucial.
Shay, let's bounce it back to you because that almost seemed like a throwdown challenge there of player swaps from Villa to Chelsea. But you're talking about maybe having to sell players. You know your club way better than us, obviously. The thing for us Liverpool fans is we have a very redoubtable transfer setup where they do crap business, but then on the other hand, they do fantastic business for cheap, and it comes out of nowhere, and there's no in between. What is the Aston Villa transfer setup like? If you're going to have to sell players, do you have the scouting system to get the next big thing on the cheap to replace that, or are you a little bit worried as a fan that you won't have the cash to buy the players you need?
I would say back in the day, I would have been worried about that because, just trying to get people and players to buy into the vision and, come to Birmingham and play for us. Like, we've always been able to do really well finding players on the cheap. And then, kind of like Kyle Glenn is, like, we used to be a selling club. I would still say are in a sense because, we're trying to solidify us as being a top team where we don't have to sell these players. But I will say this new scouting staff has been on top of it because, like I said, losing Duran, losing Diaby, and Douglas Luiz, like we literally bought in a bunch of players to, I think, prepare for this. Like those players that we got in the swap for Juventus, they were all under 22, high potential. So we could sell them for maybe, under 20 million. That's easy money to move them on. With the Morgan Rogers one, like, yeah, we've already had Liverpool, Chelsea come in. If they're going to do it, we hold all the keys. Like, yeah, we'll sell him. Guess what? You pay another $100 million like you did Jack Grealish. You can have him. We're not going to sell him for cheap just because we're in financial turmoil in a sense. Because I think the club's fine. Like the owner's got plenty of money to do it, so they'll figure it out. What they'll more than likely do is, like, say we do have to sell somebody and we don't really need to, but we got Yuri Tillemans on a free. We got Boubacar Kamara on a free. Jacob Ramsey is a homegrown player. He came through the academy. You could sell him for $40 million. That's all profit for three players, truly. So yes, it would hurt, but that could be potentially $130, $140 million combined with all three, and then go buy the players that you need to buy. I think we already just signed some 18-year-old kid from Feyenoord today on a free transfer. 18, high potential, could literally come in and we could sell him within 2 months. It was like, hey, we signed him on a free, got a contract, pay low wages, sell him off for $10 million. So that's money that we have coming in. I know earlier in the season they were rumored for the Norwegian wonder kid. Apparently, I don't know if that made any more traction, but I think we got him for a decent price, and he's one of those plays for a few years we could sell him off. It's just worrying, just because the core of the team is about to get blown up. So that's the only issue. Because, like Jamie said, I truly believe Ollie Watkins will probably be on the main one to lead this season. And then obviously we don't know what Emmy's going to do, but that's two big players you have to replace. You're losing the starting goalkeeper over the last couple of years and your main striker. So where do you go to replace that? Because teams are going to be aware, like, hey, we are going to need a striker and a goalkeeper. So they're going to sit there and, like, if you want them, you need to pay £50 million for this player. So we'll see what happens.
Just get Jamie Vardy. He'll be free. You can play him for Red Bulls.
I'll take Vardy for free as long as he doesn't play like the entire
game. Not even free. Just pay him in Red Bull. He'd be happy.
Red Bull and some wine. I think we'll be okay.
Now, Glenn, we talked about because you're kind of in the same boat almost. Not financially. I don't think Brentford need to sell, but the course of having a good coach like Thomas Frank is that he promotes players. And that means that you become a victim, like Ajax used to be back in the day. They had in 1995 one of the best Champions League winning teams of all time, and then just got picked apart the season after by Italy and Germany because they could pay more money. The Premier League is probably competitive. I would say most teams in the Premier League are competitive with most teams on the continent outside the biggest ones like Barcelona and Real Madrid and Bayern, etc. Are you worried about this team getting decimated? Or do you think the club will be smart to say, we know you guys have ambitions, but we can't let more than 3 go. We have to maintain our progress. Otherwise, what's the point in doing any of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not like when we were in League One, for example, when a championship club would come in for a top scorer and there's nothing you can do. We've got more autonomy. And just like even the Ajax, a couple of years ago at Macca, they were picked apart after that really good Champions League run. That team was just taken to pieces, just like it was, obviously, the time you mentioned. Yeah, I mean, Bumo's definitely off. Had a comment, says he, I think, about whether it's going to be United. I'm not sure. I mean, the figure they're quoting feels low. I mean, if you're paying 62 for a petulant, hot and cold Cunha, I think a 20-goal a season winger is worth substantially more than that, in my opinion, even trying to be unbiased. I'm not saying Boomer is necessarily a better player than Cunha. I think they're both pretty excellent. But if you think about if you bring temperament into it, consistency, I think Boomer would be better on both those counts. Yeah, so surely we're looking for like 60 plus for him. He'll definitely be off. And that would be like genuinely going to United if I was in his position. No European football, big wages, the prestige of the club, which is inarguable. Like, it's a huge club, still the most supported in the world, I think. So you get all that. But if you want to play at the highest level, surely you'd be looking to go to a club top 5, Arsenal, Newcastle. I mean, Spurs, ironically, will also be in the Champions League, of course. Ridiculous as it is. So he'll be off. Whether Wissa goes as well is a tricky one. He scored a stack of goals, and it's worth noting they were all non-penalty goals, right? And Bumo takes up penalties. So Wissa's like 17-odd goals. I mean, nearly 20 goals, all from open play. I mean, that's ridiculous from a Brentford forward, right? Absolutely ridiculous. So those are the two who are on the kind of chopping block in terms of like teams coming in. And, as I said, Maka, we're a selling club. Shay knows what that means as well, of course. But we also try and sell players when they're in their peak, right? We honestly want them, or just pre-peak, right? Obviously Watkins wasn't at his best before you came in for him, but what we're not going to do is hold on to players and let them have their season in the stars. We hold on to them for another season or another 2 seasons and they trail off. That's not the model we have. We have to sell them at their highest value they're going to be, at least within our team, right? Maybe they'll go on and be worth more in the future, but that's out of our hands. So by that metric, will Wissa have any better seasons than this? We've talked about before, the synergy he has with Mbumo. I don't think so. He doesn't strike me as a 20-goal forward every season kind of player. He was clinical and brilliant this season, but I don't know. I mean, if you're a selling club, I mean, you might want to cash in when he's in his prime, maybe. Beyond that, Flecken's an odd one. I mean, that wouldn't be a move we'd actually make money from because the figures being quoted the same as we've paid for him, but about 11 million either way. That's what we bought him for. If Flecken left, it would only be because I think kind of family stuff, right? He's Dutch. He's used to playing in Germany. I think if he said basically personal reasons, I want to go back to mainland Europe, then okay. But beyond that, Maka, I don't think we're going to be selling any other players. I think it's going to be the front two that are the real concerns, and you can't really replace them like for like. So it's how you're going to rejig the team and make the most of the players you've got while still bringing in one or two more, and not having the Conference League as well. That may be a blessing in disguise, at least in terms of depth, squad size, and keeping us focused on the Premier League. I would have preferred to get into the Conference League, but if we're going to lose players anyway, that would have been really difficult to navigate with a small budget and a small squad.
Let me ask you a quick question. What if the prime mover out of Brentford is Thomas Frank to Spurs? How would that affect the club?
It wouldn't. It just wouldn't happen. It would really negatively affect the club, but I can't imagine he would go to Spurs in a million years.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'd want to go work under Levi, would he? He's got so much autonomy and freedom at Brentford. He's got a brilliant relationship with Matthew Benham, our owner, brilliant relationship with Phil Giles, director of football. Like, I guess as a hypothetical, Maka, to answer your question, yeah, that would be really, really, really rough, and that would be way worse than losing probably three players.
The scenario I'm thinking of is that he does lose the players and they don't get replaced, and Spurs see a chance of a little bit of unhappiness because he has to build the project again. Yeah, and that might be a bit much for him. That might be the temptation to go to a club that can more or less afford the players. But I'm thinking because I just want to ask a quick question to you, all of you lads, after this before we move on to the last section about Man United. But Sporting Lisbon won the Portuguese league again. Brighton still continue to do well without all of their star managers. It just seems to me that Frank is more integral to, or integral, whatever way you pronounce it over in this country, to Brentford than those managers were to the clubs that they left. That there was a different structure there where the manager was important, but not as important as who they were buying and selling. But with Brentford, it seems to be he's the man.
Yeah, well, he personifies everything good about the club, and he's also been there for so long, right, Maka? He's one of the longest-serving managers in England, certainly the Premier League, probably behind Pep, right up there with, so he has been a part of this project for like 6 or so years, I want to say, maybe slightly more. So that is huge. And yeah, he has just been, his methods, his personality, his charisma are so embedded within the club, and our entire Premier League journey. Yeah, losing him would be extremely detrimental to our kind of Premier League future, but he will go, and I imagine it'll be the season after this one, but I can't imagine it will be to a Spurs or a United or whatever basket case club, because it's just not a place that, if he would have his pick of clubs, right, as a really experienced, talented manager, you would think he'd want some stability behind the scenes. And the clubs that might want him, ironically, probably can't offer the conditions he's going to want to work in. So that's why I'm feeling chill on him, but a bit more concerned about our star players, because money still talks. And if you pay enough money, we will have to sell anyone in the club, because that's our model, and that's okay. But, the money's going to talk at the end of the day with those.
Now, the question I'm going to ask, I'm going to go to Jamie, because I think we might lose him fairly quickly. Is Manchester United, Jamie, still a draw? Is the name enough? They have a dilapidated stadium. They're not in Europe, correct, next season at all, unless somebody takes pity on them, or Spurs throw them their jerseys. But is Ruben Amorim enough of a draw, and Manchester United enough of a draw to get the players they may need to get back up into the top 4, top 5?
I think it depends on your perspective. I think, and also what the alternative is. They're not the players that they're talking about, like Matis Cunha, Liam Delap. They're not but Real Madrid and Barcelona are not talking about those players. So I think they have scaled their ambitions based on their reality a little bit. I think, yes, it's a draw if they continue to play big wages. Although that's really all that they have right now. It's a big name, big expectation. Your career doesn't do great, but potentially they pay big money. And for a limited career, we've seen all the guys go to Saudi. It's not quite that, but it potentially has the ability to make or break someone's financial life. They'll make far more money there than they will at Chelsea, potentially even Spurs, other teams with wage structures. That's sometimes not going to be enough for a lot of players, though. Like, you see players who jump ship from a team like Brentford. Like, there's a lot there's a lot going right at Brentford or at Brighton. The thing that may make you leave there is not necessarily more money, although that's nice, is I might win something with this team, with this project. It would be difficult for me as a player to get behind Manchester United as a project when you've seen that project start to start, new ownership, plenty of managers, plenty of money spent, and I guess the conclusion is no real direction whatsoever. It would probably be a financial decision, or you're a Man United fan when you were growing up. One of the two.
Well, I'm going to offer the questions to do the two, but I think we're going to lose Jamie now.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Sorry,
great to see you again as always, Jamie. And I'm glad you. Good luck tomorrow. Because I don't want Anthony to win anything. And we will see you again soon. Have a good one. So let me go to you, Shane, because you suffered at the hands of Manchester United's referee reputation there the past weekend. Given everything that Ruben Amorim has done, all of his comments that came out during the season, this is the worst Man United team that's ever existed. The negative talk, and then flip-flopping the week after to, this project is going to be on a good footing kind of a thing. If you're a player, is that a manager you can trust? You mean, I'm not kind of harking back to the fact that Liverpool have won the league title, but Arne Slot came in and was just a breath of fresh air for what you would expect. He didn't want to be Jurgen Klopp, and he didn't try to be anybody else except himself, and he just kept the nice and even keel. Very Dutch, obviously, but nice and even keel and straight talking. And I would imagine even if Liverpool finished second or third, they would still be a draw for players because Arne Slot looks like he has a project. He looks like he has a vision. Unai Emery looks like he has a vision. Brentford are not, competing with Barcelona for players. But if you're a player that's looking at that level, Glenn knows well my fanboyism around Thomas Frank. But Thomas Frank can sell you. He can sell you a philosophy. Ruben Amorim doesn't seem to have one, other than I'm playing three at the back, and that's what's going to happen regardless of what the playing squad is. As a player, is that going to be something you're going to, once you get past it's Manchester United, once you get past the history, and once you get past whatever money they can afford to pay players now, is that going to be really a draw?
That's why that's why I still kind of, question Cunha moving there, because yes, it's a big money move. Like Wolves probably just, pulled their pants down to United. Like, yeah, you can have him. He is a great player. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's fantastic. But like you said, how for Thomas Frank, like they could easily go after Liam Delap. I think he would do fantastic at Brentford because he has proven that he can do it on his own. Say they keep some of their players, like they will feed onto him. He would have a better season. I think him going to United, if that one goes through, because like I said, the other one is obviously confirmed. But if he goes there, I mean, he's going to be in the same situation he kind of was at Ipswich, in my opinion, because he had to do all the work to score his goals. United had this issue all the time. Like, hey, they weren't having anybody, facilitate the goals. Like, yes, you have Garnacho and them, but they weren't like Højlund wasn't scoring a bunch of goals. I feel like Delap's going to fall into that trap. Cunha going there, I don't know why. Maybe just because it is a bigger club, he's probably getting paid a lot more than he was at Wolves. I can see him doing that, but he could have easily been bought by City or Arsenal. I think he would have done fine there. I think they'll always still have in the back that allure because it is, like we said, it's Manchester United. But how you said, as the manager, I don't know if he could be trustworthy because, he's called them out, which we have said this before. Like, that team needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. Their biggest issue is they're buying these players. What are they going to do with the other ones? Because nobody truly wants their players. If you look at it, like, you may take a slight risk on them, they'll do well. Like, yes, Anthony had a resurgence at Betis because I think he finally got out of that, just the cancer of that locker room and just being around the higher ups of the club. Because we saw all the issues for them getting the Europa. Like, the coach or the owner's like, yeah, we're not going to let the staff go. And then the players had to pay out of their pocket, and then the manager had to pay out his pocket for the staff just to go watch their team play. I was like, the culture around them is not the best. So the players going there, they're expecting the bright lights, but you're really going to go to this rink-eating stadium, the rink-eating locker room, training facilities, because I've talked about it, and they have too. Like, the facilities are crap. When Cristiano Ronaldo literally said, he's like, I left, and it's been 20 years, came back, it's still the same stuff. Like, they obviously aren't putting the money into the infrastructure that they need to build. if they did that, that shows that they are serious of taking the challenge again. But that makes a difference to, I think, these players nowadays, because I see it in college football now. Like, you have the teams that were always the blue chip programs, but if you aren't building what the players want, they're not going to come. So they'll get a couple here and there, but their biggest issue is, how we said, like, how are they going to sell off some of these players? And the few that did leave have done fantastic. McTominay has had a fantastic season at Napoli. He looks a completely different player. So I feel like some of the players have to step up and say, hey, I want out. But you get comfortable because, hey, getting paid $190,000 a week. Why do I need to leave?
We could talk about Man United all day, but let's move on, because we don't want to lose everybody, and they all go to bed, boys. So here's the question for you, Glenn, and then we'll give it to Shay. Which team has surpassed your expectations this season, and which team did way less than you thought they would? And it doesn't have to be the obvious ones of United or Spurs, like, the team that you thought would do a lot better than they did.
I mean, still Nottingham Forest. If you told me they were going to get European football, I don't think many people had predicted that. And you can say that they fell away at the end, which they did. You can say they bottled the best quality European football. Sure, probably hurts they didn't at least get Europa, because that's obviously a big step up from the Conference League. But if you're going to look at the table at the start of the season and say who would be top 10, I don't think many people would have said Forest. So I think they did still overachieve. And that gets forgotten because of their fall from grace in the final couple of weeks. So I'd still say Forest. Top 4 is the top 4. Yeah, Villa did really well when you think about how competitive Villa were in multiple competitions, including the Premier League, FA Cup, in Europe, and that's really impressive. So I'd say Villa and Forest are around there for me. And then biggest disappointment, if you take away the obvious ones, which are low-hanging fruit, I mean, collectively, I think the three clubs that came up really, really disappointed everyone. I think taken together, if you just, there's a block of 3 teams, 3 promoted teams, offered nothing. I mean, obviously Tottenham are 17th, but they're still 13 points clear of Leicester. Southampton flirted with being the worst Premier League team ever and celebrated getting that draw with City that pushed them above Derby, which was a real sign of the times over at St. Mary's. And I hope this isn't a cop-out either, because you look at some of the, Everton, West Ham, Wolves, you expect them to be around there. I think collectively as a unit, it was a pretty shocking effort by the 3. There wasn't even a Luton-style team. I thought Ipswich would be Luton, where we all kind of got behind. Some of the best games I watched last season were Luton giving everything against Arsenal and other teams and just coming up short. But Ipswich were useless. Leicester were dreadful under Van Nistelrooy. And Southampton, the less said, the better. It was a catastrophe. I didn't realize they were 10 points off Ipswich. So I think the promoted teams, I really hope we see a lot more from Sunderland, who I'm excited about. And then obviously, Burnley and Leeds, it is what it is, really, unfortunately. But I hope they compete much better and we can talk about them being mid-table or making a surprising surge up the table, because it made this season so boring, Macca, for the bottom 3 to be that bad. It really took a lot of jeopardy out of the league. And yes, it's funny, Tottenham is 17th and 1 place above relegation. That is objectively ridiculous. But when you look at the points, that also tells a slightly different story. They're nowhere near Leicester. So they were awful. And I think they actually brought down the whole quality of the league, unfortunately.
Shay, what's your answers? Who exceeded your expectations and who didn't even come close?
Yeah, I would definitely say Forest, like Glenn said, just because, the last few years, they're over here buying 30 players. Where they're going to be able to gel as a collective whole. And, they did really well this year. Manager did fantastic. And I'll say one, even Bournemouth. I didn't think they would finish top 10 this year, honestly. They did very well, played really good football the whole time. Looked like they were able to compete, because it's one a team, that always kind of flirts too the same way. They don't have the financial backing as some of these other teams in the top, but they did really well, played very great against most of the teams. I think their head coach is also fantastic. Just brings us. There's just a recurring thing with the Spanish managers, bar Arteta, where they are able to compete and show and get their teams to play a style that players want to play and are enjoying it. Disappointment, I will say, West Ham, I thought they had a fantastic summer window, in all honesty, because I was like, well, hey, this is a team that's going to compete, obviously the Moyes situation, they fired him and bring in another coach who had the pedigree of coaching at big clubs, and they were terrible. And they still have talent. It just wasn't up to the par. And then, like I said, the bottom three. I mean, I'm looking at the table. 80 goals let in for Leicester, 82 for Ipswich, and 86 for Southampton. Like, that is absurd. They're basically leaking in goals. Hopefully, when the next three come up, they aren't that bad. Which, looking at we say Leeds, Burnley, and then Southampton, or not Southampton, Sunderland. Sunderland may struggle just a little bit because it has been a long time for them to be in this league against these players and teams. When you haven't played them consistently, it's going to be a big shock for them. At least Leeds and Burnley have played in the Premier League like in the last 2-3 years, so they should be at least a little bit prepared for it. But hopefully, it doesn't turn into like how Glenn said, because it was really bad. Because I mean, you basically played against Southampton, you were guaranteed to score 3 or 4 goals, which is great for your team. Obviously, like we all enjoyed it, but when you look at the table, like that's a lot of goals let in. And just terrible defending. And like I said, the games they're not going to compete. And how he said last year with Luton, they at least tried. I feel like these 3 teams did not try at all.
I think that the thing that exceeded most people's expectations is how good looking we are whenever we're all together on this APL panel. But yeah, great thoughts as always, lads, and I appreciate them a lot. But for everybody out there who's watching, number one, make sure you're liking and subscribing and clicking the subscription buttons on the YouTube and the Facebook and the Instagram and all those other social media things, because you won't know when you're going to get this level of gorgeousness if you don't follow the news. Glenn and Shay, thank you so much for your time. We can all breathe a sigh of relief for a little bit now that the season's done. We've got pre-season games and a lot of money to spend to watch them, either live or on streams that we don't have currently. And we will see, I'm sure, next week. But everybody can keep an eye out on that. If you do all the things I just said 5 seconds ago, there you go, and you'll know what's happening. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so if we're going to watch the European game, good, enjoy it. And then the Champions League is Saturday or next week?
Saturday,
yeah. So that'll be a good one as well. And then the morning coffee tomorrow morning, so make sure you follow us. Shay, Glenn, have a good night. Glenn, your missus or whoever that was is the worst ninja on the planet. We can see her every single time she moves. But we will see everybody soon. Have a good one, and it is time for some funky music.